Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 102, Meno 81b to d. Meno must surely have heard of reincarnation before now, but he fails to notice any of the mistakes, the deliberate errors that Socrates included in his account, his summary account. It wasn't very long. If a soul is immortal, it can't die, and Socrates should have pointed out that death is the separation of soul from body. It's the body that perishes, but the soul carries on. This is the idea in reincarnation. The soul is alive when it re-enters a new body. It doesn't simply come to be when a baby is born. Now Socrates makes an observation befitting a mystery. Dende diatauta hos osiotata diabionai ton bion. So it's necessary, because of these things, to spend one's whole life as piously as possible. Piety was the subject of Euthyphro. No mention was made there of the soul being immortal, and really the immortality of the soul is irrelevant to behaving properly, to be just and to respect one's superiors. This should be normal ethical behavior. Of course, Socrates would have a hard time persuading Meno of this, and this is where Pindar comes in. Meno loves listening to famous people. This is lyric poetry, but I don't know the tune. We don't know any of the tunes to lyric poetry. The meter is erratic. It's not like the standard hexameter we find in Homer, for example. And Pindar was from Boeotia, so his Greek is Doric. Something Meno will appreciate. Why should we live as piously as possible? Socrates begins with an explanatory gar, for. Hoisti gar an, for to whoever, and then Socrates quotes a few lines of Pindar from memory. Of course, Plato didn't have to quote from memory. Persephoνα poinan palaiou pentheos dexetai, eston hyperthenalion kenon enato etei, andidoi psuchas palin, ektan basileis agauoi, kaisthenei kraipnoi sophiate megistoi, andres auxont. Esteton loipon chronon heiro eshagnoi, pros anthropon kaluntai. For those from whom Persephone will receive a punishment of ancient grief, of those she returns the souls again to the sun above in the 9th year, from whom noble kings will increase, as men both fast in strength and very great in expertise. And for the rest of time they are called by men holy heroes. So according to Pindar, Persephone, the goddess of the underworld, receives punishment or penalty or a fine, it doesn't really matter, something by which the souls of bad people are cleansed in some way, and in the 9th year she sends those clean souls back up to the light of day, where they become kings and heroes. That is to say, the cleansed souls enter bodies of babies, and they become the kings and heroes. This is why it is worth living as holy or pious a life as possible. Precisely what Pindar hasn't shown. according to Pindar, it's good enough to be punished in the underworld, and then you have a good chance of becoming a king or a hero. You may have done an ancient grief, as Pindar puts it, in the previous life. There's nothing here about the need to live as pious a life as possible in order to live an even better life next time. Socrates may have wanted Meno to react to this as well, to object and say, what has this got to do with living piously? Meno evidently is waiting passively for Socrates to carry on. So Socrates carries on, but not with Pindar. He now goes off on a tangent and starts talking about the immortality of the soul yet again. It looks like Pindar was just a sop to keep Meno happy. Hateun he psuche athanatos teus kai polakis gegonuia, kai he oraquia kai tain thade kai tain adu kai panta chremata, uk estin hoti ume matheken. Well then, since the soul is immortal and has come to be many times and has seen both the things here and the things in Hades, and all things, there's nothing it hasn't learnt. We should already be on our guard when Socrates says emphatically that the immortal soul has come to be many times. He's repeating the contradiction he made earlier, and yet Meno doesn't react yet again. Now this time, the soul sees, it has seen everything. It has seen everything, things here and in Hades. There's nowhere else, just here and Hades. And because the soul has seen everything, there's nothing it hasn't learned. How did it learn? By seeing. How has it seen everything? By being eternal. It's been around so long that it's had the chance to see everything that there is. This is hardly a philosophical explanation of anything, but it gets worse. Hosteuden thamaston kai periartes kai periallon hoiontenai auten anamnesthenai hage kai proteron epistato. So that it's not at all amazing that it can recall about virtue and about other things, which at least it knew before. Socrates has skipped an important step here, and that is when the soul enters a body, it forgets everything that it saw in Hades and in its previous lives. It's a well-known story that souls leaving Hades to come back to Earth and enter a body drink from the river Lethe, which they have to cross. Lethe means forgetfulness. So the souls forget everything by drinking the water of that river. Socrates says nothing about this. Why does he neglect to say that the soul forgets every time it comes up to enter the body? He's just argued that the soul knows everything, both here and in Hades, because it is eternal. It's been around for so many lives that it's seen everything. It's important for the argument we're going to hear that the human has forgotten everything, but the soul knows everything. It wouldn't help the argument if Socrates pointed out that it's actually the soul which forgets. It's not the human who doesn't know, it's the soul. And that because the soul forgets every time it reincarnates, then it doesn't know everything. And the fact that the soul is immortal becomes irrelevant for this argument. And one final point before we go on. Socrates has just mentioned that this is the reason that the soul, is able to recall about virtue. When did the soul see virtue? The whole idea of the soul learning things is that it saw everything. It saw what was in this world and in Hades. Virtue is not something that can be seen. It's true that Socrates ends suspiciously with the verb epistato, understood, which is not the same as having seen. Hategar tes fuseos hapaces sum genususes, kai memathe quias tes psuches hapanta, uden colue hen monon anamnesthenta, hode bathesin calusin anthropoi, tala panta auton aniuren, e antis Andreos kai me apocamne zeton. Since all of nature is connected, and since the soul has learnt everything, there is nothing to prevent someone who has recalled only one thing, what people call learning, to discover all the other things, if he is brave and doesn't shrink from searching. Togar zeten arakaito manthanen anamnesis holon estin. For to search, then, and to learn are, as a whole, recollection. Even in this conclusion, Socrates has made a bit of a mess. The searching wasn't what caused the soul to learn. Simply seeing things was learning for the soul. The soul has lived for so many generations of people that it's seen everything, and therefore it has learnt everything. But now, when it comes to the human, and Socrates hasn't even really talked about humans, he has mentioned a masculine singular pronoun, he, who apparently knows nothing until he recalls one thing, and because all things are connected in nature, by searching he can find and discover all the things which his own soul knows. What is Socrates playing at?